meeting to order, yes?
Yes.
Okay. I will use the order for director comments and roll call voting in this order: Director Hetherington, Director Stevens, Director Wallace, Director Morrison, and then myself. So roll call.
Okay. Vice President Hetherington.
Here.
Director Stevens.
Here.
Director Wallace.
Here.
Director Morrison.
Here.
And President Odette.
Here. All right, we will waive the Pledge of Allegiance. For public comment, we need to send you guys, anyone out in public needs to send emails to David Van Quest, david.vanquest@truckeetahoeairport.com, or text to 530-205-8603. This information is also listed at the top and bottom of our posted agenda. Please silence any background noise, phones, and devices. When not speaking, you may be muted. Everybody good with that?
There's no public comment. I don't know if you want to give it a minute, but I've got no text or emails.
Okay. So where are we? Special orders of business, COVID-19 ops, and business continuity update.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try and be brief. We did a COVID-19 update for the board on Thursday, but just a couple of highlights that we talked about there was the airport district stays very engaged and involved with local stakeholder meetings, keeping up to date on all COVID-19 response protocols in our community, and we try and observe all those. We occasionally get calls from people that want to know why our airplane's still flying. The airport is an essential service, although we have tried to limit and discourage visitation. People can still come through the airport. Now, I will say that there is little, if any, visitation or vacation traffic coming to the airport right now. We don't see any of that. We have 5 to 15 operations a day, and they're pretty much mostly all local folks that are flying in and out. I also talked a little bit about the CARES Act. We did get $157,000 in CARES Act funding, plus 100% of our FAA grants funded this year from the CARES Act, which actually ended up being about $500,000 of additional funds that we had programmed that we're not going to have to use. We'll talk maybe a little bit later in the meeting of how we might be able to use those monies to help in COVID relief here locally. That's really all I wanted to talk about. The last thing maybe I'll say is just that we have started talking about what a return to normal program would look like, whatever normal is, and a reopening planning and kind of how we might do that based on some of the scenarios that have been put out there. However, we don't know when that is or when that'll be, but we are at least thinking down that line right now. So that's kind of all I have for that update that I was going to carry forward right now.
Okay. Any public comment, David?
Nope.
Okay. Then I think we are on to the consent agenda. Anybody have anything they want to poll, item 1 or 2?
No questions.
Then I move that we approve items 1 and 2 on the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Or do we have to
Aye.
roll call it?
Oh.
Brent, do we have to roll
Brent?
call these?
Brent?
Brent, do we need to roll call all the votes? I'm not sure if Brent can hear us.
He can't hear.
Actually, your yes.
Yes? Okay.
Roll call.
Okay.
Okay, Vice President Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Director Wallace?
Yes.
Director Morrison?
Yes.
And President Odette?
Yes. Okay, we're on to reports and presentations. Aviation and Community Services Department report.
All right, good evening. I'll just quickly go over some highlights from the quarter. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So as far as operations go in the quarter, we were up about 10%. Mainly that came from February due to heavy snowfall in February the year before. In January, we were actually down almost 10% in operations. In March, we were down almost 50% in operations, mainly due to COVID-19, about halfway through the month when the stay-at-home order went in place. After that stay-at-home order happened, there was a noise comment we received about 5901 Golf doing some flight training. That comment prompted a discussion by management at the airport and a decision to restrict that aircraft so that it's no longer available for flight training. So an instructor can't go in with a pilot or student and do training. It's only available for rent or solo flights until further notice. Looking at comments, households and comments were both down for the quarter, which is good, given that operations were up. Piston aircraft were the most commented on, and the number of households were kind of evenly distributed throughout the neighborhoods for the quarter. As far as night ops, there was nothing after 11 p.m. or before 6 a.m., excluding care flight. And an exciting event that happened in the quarter in February, there was a Lancer that was coming from the Bay Area to Utah that reported having a loss of their electrical and loss of power when they were coming over Donner Summit. ATC at first was sounding like a little bit confused as to exactly what was happening. But once they realized the situation, removed another aircraft that was already in the pattern to land and allowed that aircraft to come and land on runway 29 safely. And they were able to get out of the plane and push it over to Sierra Aero to be worked on. So that's it for highlights for the quarter. If anyone has any questions.
I have a question about the night ops. There were 14 between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. But were none of these within using the fly quiet, or were they given permission?
So 10 of them were hangar tenants, and none of them violated their flight quiet incentives. So
they're just in the fly quiet one, or they're not in the...
some were flight quiet 1, which is 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., and some were flight quiet 6:30 to 10:30.
So they went ahead. They were within. So 14. Have we ever monitored how night operations is changing over time?
Sorry, Mary, I didn't hear your question.
Are we monitoring like over time night operations change?
Yeah, we have records of the last, I'm not sure how many number of years, as far as like what hour each month and quarter those night ops came, so we do have that information.
Is 14 a higher amount in your opinion, watching all this? That seems like a lot to me. I don't know.
I don't think it's very different from last year or average, I'd say, for the number of operations in the quarter.
Not percentage wise. I'm just talking about pure numbers. If we're getting more happening between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Anything more than what we've seen generally.
Okay.
Pull that number for you if you'd like.
Mary, we're getting feedback off of your computer. If you could turn the sound down on your computer, we wouldn't get that.
I don't know what to do. I put the plug in.
There's actually a lot of people who are not muted. Kelly's muted. Teresa's not muted. Rick's not muted. Brent's not muted. It could be any of those people triggering this feedback.
Yeah, if you could mute, everyone could mute that's not talking, that would Brent, I think we're getting some from you.
Sorry.
Okay, so are we done with the,
I guess I just would like
Aviation
to see it
report?
over time. You know, something from,
Teresa,
David can put together over time, maybe over the last 5 years. You probably can pull that up pretty easily.
I think I have that up right now, actually.
Well, something you can address next month or in the next quarter report. I'd like to see a trend over time. What are we seeing in this 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. period?
I can do that for you.
Okay. And, if you want to send it to me ahead of time, I'd like to see it.
Will do.
Trending. Okay?
okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Teresa, I'll pick up on page 2 of the AdCom communications report. And
Okay.
like the data that David saw, when assembling the data, it was immediately obvious that the airfield activities and the community outreach schedule was very busy right up to until we hit the brick wall of COVID-19. We started systematically complying with the social distancing mandates on March 16th. Boardroom usage for the quarter was flat in comparison with the previous year. Even with those 2 less weeks, there were 34 groups used the airport communication. The top Q1 social media Facebook post was one of the Tahoe Nordic Search and Rescue working backcountry rescue exercises with the Placer County Sheriff's helicopter. And Tinzar obviously used the Snowcat and the truck hauler that was part of the agency's partnership that the airport district supported. There were over 6,000 views on that post. One of the Tinzar reps wanted me to advise the board members that they'll be doing, once things return to normal, they'll be doing an interim report in person. But they wanted you to know that they finally did take possession of the truck hauler that is used to move the Snowcat, and that happened on March 5th. Typically, the Q1 months are a little bit quieter for AvCom events and public outreach, but we actually had 8 significant events. There were 3 youth STEM airfield tours and staff career presentations. One was Pathways to Aviation, which held three classes actually during Q1. And then also Forest Charter School and the Boys and Girls Club of North Lake Tahoe all got airfield tours. The district also in-house published the Connected, the spring edition, and that was mass mailed out to 20,000 local district mailing addresses. And then finally, with highlights and events, the AvCom team, Mark Covey in particular, was instrumental in purchasing and actually taking possession of the new Precision Flight Controls GTX flight training simulator. And we expect that to be up and running here within the next month once staff and the local pilot instructors are trained on it, and that we have a good, solid reservation and use policy in place. Mr. Covey asked me to let you know that as an example of quieter skies, that flight simulator potentially for a student that is getting their, say, instrument rating, they can log actually 40% of their airtime can be logged with an instructor on that flight simulator, and they don't have to be in the air over our skies. Next, talking about the community sponsorship program, those are the ones for sponsorships of 3,000 or less. In Q1, there were 20 groups that were sponsored for a total of $16,750. 8 of those were not local nonprofits, and 12 were youth educational or athletic organizations. There were 0 new agency partnership awards given in Q1, and those, not awards, but sponsorships. Finally, with the website traffic, it was relatively flat with last quarter, first quarter in 2019. There were just over 18,000 users and 75,000 page views. The biggest bulk, as is typical, was with the live webcam. That's always a favorite, with over 45,000 hits on that. Ultimately, I think we've seen the impact of the pandemic in Q1, but ultimately, I think it will be most reflective when we report back to you in Q2 in 3 months, basically to see what the true impact has been, not only to our community, but to the airport. I've done an extensive PowerPoint. If you're interested, that's tab 3B, if you want to see some more information on our community outreach efforts through the ABCOM team. And that's it.
Okay. Any board comment, any staff comment, questions? Any public comment, David?
No public comment. Mary, I did just email you the Q1 night counts for the last 5 years.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Quarterly financials. And Kelly, your hair looks great. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. There you are.
How about now?
Hey, Jim.
Okay. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Sorry, I had you on my phone. This was don't cut your own hair.
Yeah, it looks great.
Just a quick financial update for the quarter. I'll give you kind of the rundown of where we're at month to date or quarter to date. I know the financials are a little bit different looking this month, and so we'll continue to evolve these. We do have all of the hangar breakout, OBL and warehouse now by each lease, if you will. But we had to fix that in our accounting software, so we'll see that broken down by each one starting in April. So right now we don't have it there, but it will be going forward. So for the first quarter of 2020, FBO service revenues are $760,000. We're $151,000 ahead of our budget this year and $205,000 ahead of last year. All that lack of snow really helped us out, and we did a lot of fuel sales and service sales in the first quarter. Hangar revenues were slightly under, but we are definitely ahead of 2019 on all fronts. All day total revenue, we're about $100,000 ahead of budget and $366,000 ahead of last year. And this kind of all relates to kind of our reforecasting, but I'm really thankful that we had a fairly strong first quarter. Our fuel gallons sold, 100 low lead was up 2%, Jet A up 41%. On the expense side of the world, payroll was almost exactly on target. Operating and G&A expenses were down under budget, and then R&M as well. Since everything kind of happened with COVID and we've been all sheltering, not a lot of money being spent, which is helpful. So at the end of the day, bottom line, we're $387,000 after depreciation with a budget of a loss of $523,000. So looking good for the first quarter. Yeah. But just wanted to talk quickly about kind of reforecasting things for the second quarter, because As we all know, we're not really going to hit those numbers that we were shooting for. So Kevin and I talked, and we thought a reduction on the FBO side of 40%, hangar revenues 10%, OBL 10%, and warehouse revenues down 40%. So by doing that reduction, not changing anything with payroll or expenses, would be a reduction in net income of $250,000. So in theory, we'd have that, but again, if the spending on the expense side continues to be under budget as it has been for the first quarter, that should help us out a lot. So I think
why is do you have any insight as to why the warehouse revenue is down 40%? That's
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
the main reason
amount
is,
that we want to bring it down.
well, no, the main reason we dropped that is that Clear Capital is moving out. They had a unit that they gave up, and so we need to come back and talk to the board about what you want us to do with that unit. But there'll be a little bit of lost revenue there. It may not be that much, but it was they're one of our 2 market tenants in there.
How many positions is that leaving of their 100 that they committed to when we put the building in? Do you know how many, like when that unit's moving, is that like 20 jobs? Is that 40 jobs?
No, it's their warehouse. So they're not doing anything with the office building.
It's where his cars are parked.
Yeah, it's where all the vehicles he's had are parked.
Got it. Thank you.
And then just real quick update on the audit. We were going to try to have a presentation tonight, but it wouldn't have been enough time to give y'all to read through all the documentation and information. So we'll have a representative from James Marta at the next meeting, either in person or on Zoom, to go through the audit. And so we're pretty much ready to close the books on 2019. I think that was pretty much all I had. Does anyone have any questions on the financials?
No. Any public comment or questions?
Public comment. Oh, nope, no public comment. Texted me.
Okay. Let's see, what's next? Monthly ACAT.
Hi, everybody.
You, Marty?
It's me.
Oh, hi, David.
Hey, how's it going? And so these notes are for the March 3 meeting. We didn't have a meeting in April because of the COVID thing, and we didn't have time to scramble and decide what we were going to do. We will actually, Lauren's polling the ACAT members this week to see if anybody has any objection to starting to do these virtually, because we're not sure when we're going to actually be able to sit in a room together again. So we're hoping to find out the answer to that this weekend and make a decision on that May 1st. So going on to what we discussed in the last meeting, there was a discussion about it was brought to our attention that there were some scheduling issues with regard to the diesel aircraft that the airport owns that's managed by Sierra Aero. We asked the parties involved to come in and talk to ACAT. They came into ACAT and they did not describe really a conflict. They described a situation where they chose to, or they wanted to discuss it amongst themselves, and ACAT agreed that that was the best course of action. So ACAT made no recommendations, and we're willing to talk to them again if they come to a situation where they can't resolve it themselves. There was a discussion about the Trails Project ad hoc meeting, or a discussion group, and whether or not that should be disbanded. The 2 people on the ad hoc did not want to disband the group. We wanted to find out from the board if the board has any appetite for continued work on trails before we made a final decision on that. So we're hoping that you can provide us some guidance on that, so we should know if that's something we should keep going on. There was a discussion about a hangar rent increase. The original goal for this was to see if we could get a policy whereby hangar rents were increased across the board, and for those local property tax payers who presumably had already been paying into the airport, that through discount it could be reduced so that they would not actually get a rent increase. It would basically be reduced to the rate that they're at today. Peter Kirsch, legal counsel, gave some advice to Hardy on that. Basically, that we could not produce a program whereby local tenants would get a discount that would exceed the property tax they had paid. So this would become a logistical nightmare, and it would probably result in a property tax increase because we'd have to have a standard rate according to the FAA. So we decided to scrap that entirely. The next topic was the emergency landing map. We got an initial narrative for that. This has been going on for quite a while now, so I apologize for that. It kind of lacked the context that we were looking for. David Van Quest sort of picked up on that and submitted an additional subsequent draft that's definitely putting us in the right position with that. So we will have a document by your next board meeting that will be a proposed finished draft of this, even if, or we'll have a complete finished draft of it. But either way, that'll be before your next board meeting, so we can get this completed. The drone footage is done. The photographs of the area is done. The map is done. All the hard stuff is done. We're just at the last stage where we just need that narrative for pilots. On the Safe Haven project, Mark Covey drafted a policy which was largely complete and really good on this. Some changes are being implemented based on feedback of that. And then he's going to get that to Kevin for Kevin's review. And then based on Kevin's review, then we will continue on that and finish that policy. And that project, again, by your next board meeting, we expect, or those of us who are involved with that, expect that to be live and finished by that point in time. The real estate guide is being postponed until May 1st. We had a hard time originally getting a hold of John Falk, who was our contact he's the government affairs coordinator for the Tahoe Sierra Board of Realtors. And then we had some concern with one of the people on the ad hoc committee, one of the members on the ad hoc committee, about meeting virtually. So what we've done is we've delayed that until May 1st, and that at May 1st, we'll decide how we're going to decide if we can meet in person. If we can't meet in person, what we're going to do is schedule virtual meetings, and we're just going to have to push through with that. Doing it that way. So we will get a draft of our content updated based on our meeting with John once that happens. And the last topic was the voluntary curfew. Staff asked us to consider some changes to the voluntary curfew policy. ACAT made some recommendations. And then Hardy took those recommendations and has put those together into a draft that he has now sent to Kevin for review. Once that's sorted out through Kevin, Hardy will have a survey to pilots to make sure that pilots understand what's going on, get their input on it, and then further action will be taken based on that. That's all.
Great. Thank you.
Any
Any
questions?
board comments, questions?
I'm curious, are we going to get to see what these proposed called voluntary curfew changes are before it goes out to public? I would like to see what the proposal is before.
I think our plan was to refine it as far as we could and then bring it to the board for board review, and we'll get you in there. We were trying to do all the back legwork ahead of time, including the pilot survey, so we had some data to show the board.
Yeah, they have to be approved by the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to see the board just and then bring it back to the board. I'd like to see what the changes proposed are.
And Mary, can you say that again? At what point you want us to send you what we have now?
Yeah, I'd like to see what the proposal is now before it goes out to the pilots for their survey, and then
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I'll send you the package.
Okay. Then
Anyone
David?
else?
Why do you want to disband trails? Are we giving up on trails?
No, the question was whether if ACAT and by extension staff continued to work on that, if we were to come to the board because something needed to be funded, would the board have a continued interest in that, or would we get the feedback from the board that money needs to be spent elsewhere, thereby making it kind of a waste of the teams and staff time? The question is basically, should we continue working on that sort of thing now, or should we postpone this until another time?
Well,
maybe
my personal opinion is I'm still interested in trails. Maybe not in the next 3 months, given the situation. But I think trails, it's part of the Airport Act, is something that we can spend money on. I read the ordinance that somebody named Collison gave me.
Yeah, if I could just add to that real quick, the original focus of that ACAT team, that committee, was to develop a trails master plan, which they did, and then the board has adopted that. And we've essentially put out to the community that here's where trails are appropriate on airport property, and some of those have actually been built. And really the question that I think, and it may be a future agenda item, is does the board want us to actively go out and pursue funding for some of these trails? We're already putting it out there that we have a trails master plan. Here's all the places trails can be built. That's really the question, is should we be funding them and applying for grants for them? But we can talk about that on a different agenda.
My other question is on the emergency landing map project. I looked back through previous board meetings. Map's been available since January, and I'm thinking back when we had the noise abatement procedures, how it went through so many iterations. But I think having that brochure out in the public and I would like to see this get pushed harder to get out, with whatever needs to be done with the text, get it out there. And to me, this is a good argument for why aircraft might want to prefer, winds being appropriate, it's all tied to winds, but, for a pilot to see going off 1-1 or off 2 or off 2-0, there's a lot more places in an emergency, and it's just education from that component that I want to see this get out sooner. Whatever it takes to get this out on brochures, on our website.
Right. I apologize for the delays on this. There have been, if we went back over the delays, they were a series of unfortunate events that I think in some cases could have been avoided. However, I'm very confident now the hard part is over, and we're at that last point now where we just need the narrative, which should be a very, very simple process. David, as I mentioned, David Van Quest has shown that he's on board with that. He knows kind of what we're looking for. And I think it will be, once we get that information together, then we can get that out there and then get into the hands of pilots who can then decide based on their aircraft and capabilities and that they get some ideas about if a single engine goes out, where the best places to be are. So
I think this is a great idea, and I'm thankful to ACAT to bringing it up and but just whatever it takes, staff or ACAT or whoever, but let's push this a little bit harder.
Mary, I'm pretty confident we'll have that for you by next board meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Brent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It took me a while. Going back about 5 minutes, it took me that long to unmute. On sending out, I know Mary had asked to have something sent to her, and I wasn't sure if it was all of the board members or just her. If it's just her, that's fine, but I've got a concern if it goes to all the board members, then we've got a hub and spoke situation. They can look at it, you can all look at it, but don't comment on it because that would be seen as taking action without the meeting. So if it's for review, that's fine ahead of time, but don't give any feedback to staff unless it's just less than a majority.
Yeah, he sent it to me, and I was just asking for at the future board meeting that I wanted to see it now, but in the future we can have that. I want to see that trend over time. You okay there, Teresa?
Yeah.
So that it was
iPad's propped up just right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Then we're on to air show update.
Yep, I'll just
Thank
give a
you.
brief,
Thank you to
update on the air
ACAT.
Yes, thank you.
just a brief update on the air show. I sent out an email, let folks know that the air show committee met this week, and they've decided to, at least at this point, postpone the show into September. The date they were looking at was September 12th. There's still quite a few issues that need to be rectified to see if that date will work. And whether or not it's a full air show or an air show light is still being determined. There may be issues with volunteers at that time of year and folks that we depend on to do the show. But because the show has the potential to be kind of maybe a pick-me-up for the community and maybe even inject a little bit of economic benefit to our community if it's appropriate at that time, they didn't want to cancel it altogether yet. But it was decided that based on what we know right now, it's highly unlikely that gatherings of 12 to 15,000 people are going to be something we can do by July 11th, and all the prep that it takes to get there. They thought postponing would be better. There will be a new message that goes out on our website, probably up tonight or tomorrow, that kind of explains that. But the air show committee is still working away, hoping that they can do something in September.
What's the new tentative date?
September 12th is the tentative date.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Staff and board member conference attendance report. None to report.
0.
Yes, that one's done. Okay,
Yeah.
action. Rent and lease payment deferral policy.
I'll kick this off. The board has 3 documents in front of them: the staff report, the resolution, and then a deferral rent form that I created. I'll be pretty brief, and then we can open up for questions and clarification. This initiative, based on our recent COVID pandemic, is essentially a voluntary effort by the airport district and the board. It's not required. There's no requirement for us to make a rent forbearance or a relief package or assistance. This is entirely voluntary. And Brent obviously can add to that if we need to. We just wanted to come up with a program that would offer the board some flexibility and a framework that allowed us to complete these 2 objectives. One of the primary objectives, obviously, is to defer an appropriate amount of rent to help the widest array of local airport businesses during the economic slowdown. We estimate that may require 1 to 4 months worth of rent deferral and forbearance, and we suggested in the resolution that we amortize that over 18 months or so. The deferral form really outlines the agreement between the airport and the tenant, so that's designed to be customized between the general manager or his designee and the tenant to give them some relief during this period of economic slowdown. The other objective is really to administrate the program fairly and transparently, as we're required to from FAA federal grant assurances related to non-discrimination. Most landlords and entities collecting rent are facing the need to negotiate with tenants based on the condition of the economy. That's pretty obvious. This includes commercial landlords, like, we know many of them, residential rent payers, government organizations and agencies. So everybody's in it together. It's pretty common. I talked to a lot of airports when I built this resolution describing some of the programs that they had done to work with their tenants. The California court has ruled, based on Governor Newsom's order, that no adverse action can happen against a rent-paying tenant until such time the emergency order is lifted and 90 days thereafter. So essentially, we have no ability to take punitive action against a tenant who doesn't pay rent or pay their lease payment. So the goal was really to try and work with the people on the airfield to prevent them from essentially exercising their right under the California guidance from the court system and essentially not pay rent for a 90-day period. So hoping to work together on that. We have about 250 tenants on the airport, and I just wanted to remind everybody that there's a lot of rent-paying tenants on the airport. We have 10 or so commercial non-aeronautical businesses and nonprofits, plus about 4 significant aeronautical businesses here on the airport. We created the resolution to allow the board some flexibility. A policy would also be appropriate, and we can all develop a policy for the board if we want to go that route in the future next month, or if the program needs additional enhancement. We do expect some level of financial impact and difficulty with our tenants in the coming months. The extent right now is completely unknown. We're hoping to learn more about that as time goes on. But we do need to prepare ourselves to make additional policies to deal with some of the actions coming back from our leases and our rent payers here on the airport. So in talking with other airport executives, we just need to brace ourselves and understand that it's going to be a little bit tough for a while, and the airport can work with our tenants. So we may look at some additional policies that will enable us to do that. And finally, the resolution is somewhat open-ended to allow different requests, but a cap on the monthly exposure to the district of $5,000 and a program exposure of $175,000 total was essentially an estimation on our part, and it's really up to the board's guidance on what you want to do on the program. Kelly Wu did some good financial analysis for us, and essentially a 3-month forbearance with the people that have asked us at this point. It's just the people that were proactive about reaching out, has about a $45,000 impact. That could change greatly depending on which tenants come to us and ask us for relief during this period of time. But again, the program's flexible. It's open to the board. It's not required. And I can answer any questions or help us walk through this, and Kevin and Kelly can as well.
Did anybody not pay April?
I had tenants tell me in March that they were unable to pay in April.
Did anybody not pay in April?
I believe, from my knowledge, I guess Kelly could answer it.
I'm not sure right now, but I can find out who hasn't paid. So far, we've heard of people asking for assistance, but I'll check to see who hasn't.
My experience is I've got 3 industrial tenants in Torrance, and we got authorization for our lender to reduce their rent by 50% for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think my question/commentary around this is about a little bit to following on what Rick was saying. What are we hearing from our tenants? I mean, personally, Kelly, I'm not interested in the list of names of people who didn't pay. I'm interested in like a scale of magnitude of what happened. We have however many tenants we have, and this many did not pay April rent. Just as an indication. And from Hardy, not like who contacted you and said I can't pay rent, but how many people proactively reached out? 6, 5,
Yeah, sure. Well, we had 1 aeronautical business reach out. We had 2 warehouse tenants, 1 nonprofit and 1 rent-paying tenant in the warehouse. We had 1 private hangar tenant, and we had 1 rental car agency reach out. So on the scale of the full tenants that I outlined, 240 plus 4 aeronautical and 10 non-aeronautical businesses, the number is fairly small at this point. I do believe it's going to go up, and I also believe that some people may not have the financial acumen to understand how bad it's going to be for them, so they may wait a month or 2 and try to get through it on their own, which is
and that I think for me is another way of thinking about it, which is addressed somewhat in the staff report is, what are our goals with this, right? Like we want to, in particular, help businesses stay in business and help businesses retain employees. Like what are some of the principles we're trying to put forward by considering a rent forbearance or extension or discount or whatever, right? So just to say as one person, I'm generally supportive of really trying to help people out who are financially impacted, just as one board member.
Okay, I think we were supposed to go in order, but we're not. So Jim is after Lisa, but Mary was first. So what do you guys want to do? Mary?
Okay. I think it works better for my microphone.
Okay. I I'm supportive, as Lisa said, of the idea of helping out the people who are really being hurt, you know, and in terms of nonprofits or business. And I'm trying to think of it in terms of a triage type entity. And I actually went through and using the budget numbers that Kelly had put together and divided that annual number by 12, and 5,000 a month seems significant because most of the tenants are in a, you know, 1,200 to 2,300 a month range. So I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the 5,000. I do have also some heartburn with the first come first served, as happened with the PPP. There's been entities that have come in. To me, there's something concerning about the first come first serve, and the way that I read the way that it's written. I think the intention is different than the way it's written, and I had other people read this, but when I read it, it looked like I could come in and ask for 18 months of forbearance, and it should be clearer that it's a certain number of months of forbearance, but it's going to be amortized to be paid back over 18 months. The way it reads to me is that I can get 18 months of forbearance, and that concerns me quite a bit. So I would like to see a number more like 2,500. I'd like to see not first come first serve. I'd like to see that there's some financial need. Also, in talking to other entities, there is that aspect of commercial entities are more able to get a line of credit as compared to other entities that cannot. And so how we are going to affect that. So those are just my thoughts. Where we land, I am supportive of helping out people, and I do agree that with Hardy in that there's going to be people later who are going to need help, and if it's first come first serve, it could be all gone.
So
and maybe not to those who need it the most.
First come first served and 175,000 both seem somewhat irrelevant, because if we get to 175,000 and the next person asks, we're going to make an accommodation, right? So it's a pretty arbitrary number.
Yeah, we don't really have a choice based on the governor's order. We would prefer to have agreements in place with these folks. And I'll just quickly comment on Mary. She had a good point. I agree with the amortization thing. We could probably clarify that a little bit. If somebody did ask for 18 months of forbearance, which I would not grant based on how this is written, they'd have to pay it all in 18 months. It only gives an 18-month term to repay, but we could add a little clarity to that.
I think I like until the emergency order is lifted plus 90 days. If it were up to me to write it, I wouldn't say, oh, you asked for 6 months, we'll give you 6 months. No, let's put a policy in place that said emergency plus 90 days. And then the repayment period really should be the term of their lease. Why would we give them 18 months if they only have 7 months left on their lease?
Many of our leases are month to month, particularly the hangar tenants. So I agree with you on the 90 days plus, which would be essentially, roughly 4 months of deferral, and then amortizing the repayment. I think we would want to state that just based on many of our leases being month to month.
Okay, well, we should put something in that says it's due if they leave.
Right. And that would be more of a policy application. We could certainly get there. The one piece I wanted to comment on, Mary, thank you for clarifying. I think I could have done better explaining the difference between the amortization and the actual deferral period. So thank you for that. And we can correct that. The one piece about the cap of 5,000, many of the people that have approached us are well over the $5,000 mark already. So 5,000 was the median like a commercial tenant who's paying $11,000 a month in rent versus a T-hanger tenant who's paying $500, the ones that are going to financially significantly impact the district are going to be near or above 5,000. Rental car companies, commercial OBL tenants, EMS operators, aeronautical operators, etc.
It doesn't seem fair.
I ran the numbers and I sent them to Kevin, and CareFlight is $2,500 a month.
I don't know that the 5,000 is
Surf Air
relevant
is
anyway.
$1,800. Well,
I mean, if somebody asks,
part of me is looking at the.
Go ahead.
It's the optics, is it to me? And when I don't see the tenants who are above 5,000 are Clear Capital, Mountain Home Center, and those are the ones that are above 5,000.
There's more
to me, again, thinking of triaging. Well, that's interesting, because who could that be if I'm looking at the budget and taking our anticipated income out of the budget. This is the 2020 budget, and I'm just taking the pure numbers and dividing it by 12. These are, unless those numbers are correct in the budget.
I'm sure the budget's correct. I'm just going to give an example. Would be aeronautical operators that have multiple hangars, Sierra Aero, who has their business lease plus multiple hangars, Enterprise, Hertz, rental car companies that have multiple pieces of rent. So,
Hertz and Enterprise, Hertz and Enterprise pay about $27,000 a year.
What about
does anybody else think it's pertinent or not?
What about Clear Capital, the office tenant? Not the car.
Those guys are making money hand over fist right now with their valuations.
That's what I was saying, is that you don't automatically have to give these things, Kevin.
And I'm going to get to that, right? Because there's a whole list of 1 to 5. Anyway, Mary, to your question, I personally don't think that a cap is really relevant. And if we're going to give 100% to this person, we have to give 100% to that person, regardless of the dollar amount, to be fair. I think. I'm not sure.
Well, I sent you that sheet based on the budget, and so you can see the only ones that are above 5,000 are commercial enterprises, but not easily, but they can get a line of credit.
I think
they have to pay it back in the end.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I guess from where I'm sitting, if I'm talking to one of these tenants and they're saying, "Well, we'll do a $5,000 cap," they're gonna. If they say, "Well, I don't even have that. I don't have anything, so I'm not paying anything." We don't have any recourse. What I would rather do is figure out and work with these folks and get some agreement on when and how things will happen, and get that quantified down in writing so that we know for our own accounting how these things are going to progress. So in that sense, some of these numbers aren't that relevant. However, it's good to put program guidelines in there so people know what our thinking is. But if these tenants aren't going to pay, then there's nothing we can do about it.
So
until the order's over.
The 175 cap seems somewhat irrelevant, because if we get there, we'll go over it. And if you put it out there that it's first come, first serve, and it's like the PPP program, everyone will apply. So that they're not left behind.
That was a recommendation from our legal counsel, that we have some kind of a payment deferral funding program cap.
How else would you do it if it wasn't first come, first serve? Are you proposing that you have a committee that figures this out, or are you just going to pick the people that you like and not pick the people you don't like? I mean, it seems pretty tough.
I'm assuming we're going to have to allow all of them to defer. So there's no point in time where we're going to run out and start kicking people out because they are the $176,000. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I would think that you need to remember that you're just asking people to defer their rent, so they still have to pay it. They have to decide: do I really want to not pay my rent and then have a big payment due at the end of COVID? And some people that might help a lot, and other people it might not. And I think, to Hardy's point, some people, if they don't pay their rent for 4 months or 6 months, may just pack up and leave and that may be lost revenue. My guess is we lose a little bit of revenue and we lease the hangar to someone else who really wants it and is willing to pay for it and can afford it. So, and I'm not a big fan of picking and choosing commercial versus non-commercial. I think I'm a little conflicted on the fact that some of these businesses that are paying rent are trying to, I don't know, mitigate their expenses and focus on liquidity, and that's what the world's telling them to do. And versus, you know, the guy who's got his airplane in his hangar, he might not be as focused on that. And what's to say that I can't take a line of credit out on my house to pay for my airplane hangar when I can take a line of credit out on my business? I don't really understand the difference there.
Well, I was going to suggest that we adopt some sort of policy that makes them qualify that they have a financial impact, which is pretty standard at a commercial level. And there's lots of verbiage out there about it. And Mary, I sent it to you. Do you have it handy? Well, there's a bunch of them. I can send them out, not to each of you, but let's see. It says
a family or household member.
Family or household member is diagnosed with COVID-19. Number 2, prove layoffs, loss of hours, blah blah blah. Yeah. Number 3, compliance with stay-at-home orders during state of emergency. This is the short list. Extraordinary expenses incurred related to diagnosis, testing, or treatment, childcare needs, etc. There's some sort of documentation they have to provide that says, I can't pay you, not because I don't want to, and I'm going to take 4 months for free and then leave, but I really have been impacted. Like the restaurant, obviously impacted, right?
Yeah, I'm more worried about those businesses that are not able to create revenue and not able to pay for their business, like the restaurant, like the rental car company, than I am just people who are saying, well, I'm not flying much, so I shouldn't have to pay, right? I think if they truly can't afford it, we should create a way for them to defer their payments. If they truly can't afford it and they don't want to be there anymore, we should figure out how to lease the space to someone else.
And that should really be a 4-month process.
I like the idea of having a little bit of you have to prove a little bit of hardship. And that could be your list there or the general manager's other discretionary decision. And just leave it at that.
Yeah, I prefer having the some verbiage in a policy to guide us, and Teresa and or Mary, I'm a little confused, have come up with some examples. I think we both the appearance of and the actuality of, if we leave it to the GM's discretion, we're too open for discrimination. But the types of things that Teresa and or Mary have listed are a good list, and I don't think the intent there, I'm quite sure the intent is not that someone has to cough up 50 pages of documentation, right? They need to write a letter, provide minimal documentation that establishes which of those reasons.
I agree with all that. We should do that.
And Lisa, just to clarify, I was only recommending we use Teresa's list and then we add the general manager's discretion to the bottom of it in case there's something that is truly a hardship that somehow doesn't fit into our policy.
I see.
So, Kevin, are you
this is Brent.
Oh, hi, Brent.
Oh, sorry. Denote item 1 in the resolution is that it does say that the tenants who are experiencing financial hardship related to COVID-19. So it's not just somebody coming in saying, I don't want to pay for a while. Having some documentation is certainly appropriate, but I think, the standard is in that resolution, and I didn't draft it, so I'm not trying to take any credit for it.
I put a little form in the deferral rent form to provide the reasoning why, proof of hardship, essentially. And we could expand that or attach additional as well.
And just,
I think we should.
Yeah. And in terms of, you know, an attestation. I mean, they're signing it, but this is all true and correct.
Mm-hmm. So 90 days past the lifting of the emergency order. Is everybody in agreement with that?
I would use no later than, because some of these folks may not want that much, and obviously we just say no later than that. I like that.
And it needs
whatever repayment terms is fine with me.
And it needs to be clearer, because the way that it reads is that you could just ask for the 18 months. The way it reads is that I can defer for 18 months. And so I need some clarity on that.
Is our goal, Teresa or Kevin, to get the board to adopt the resolution with these modifications now, or we're not talking about a redraft of an additional policy?
I would hope we could get something drafted tonight, or not drafted, but I think with some amendments or corrections to the resolution, if everyone's okay with that.
I've kept track of them, and I can read them back to the chair when the discussion's completed.
And does anybody else have heartburn with the first come, first serve?
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
I agree. I don't like first come, first serve. Kevin's got to use some intelligence on this list. We're putting a big burden on you, Kevin.
Well, I understand. I guess what I'm getting at, though, is doesn't matter what I say to anyone that comes to ask. If the governor's order is in place, they don't have to pay.
That's not true commercially.
Well,
Teresa knows.
Okay, well, I hope you understand that, because what I'm being told is that if I go to evict, if I go to evict someone, the people I go to evict a tenant are going to tell me we're not handling those kind of evictions until after the emergency order is resolved. But if someone else has other clarity on that, please let me know.
It is different in commercial.
Some additional information is, my understanding is, all of the sheriffs have been ordered not to carry out an eviction, even if they're able to get a judgment for possession. The sheriffs are not enforcing it. Once again, subject to it has to be related to the COVID-19.
Yeah, the COVID-19 thing, obviously, and we're not going to defer anyone that's not related to that.
And
I just don't
think any of us are looking to kick anybody out.
Exactly.
Right? We're trying to accommodate completely. So even talking about eviction, it's like we're going to grant them all, is my point. So first come, first serve just feels like it will create some frenetic applications.
And we're not forgiving rent, is that correct?
That's correct.
Deferring it?
It's deferred. Mm-hmm. We're not letting anyone. Yeah.
So, are we all in agreement that we could just take the first come, first serve verbiage out and leave it without those words?
Yes.
Works for me.
That's better.
Okay, and Hardy, what else in your notes could we kind of go over?
We need to enhance the financial impact, proof of financial impact from COVID-19. We want to amend the document to have an attestation component. We want the document to state that after the lifting of the governor's order, tenants will have the access to the program for a period of 90 days. And we
to exceed.
First come, first serve.
And is everybody comfortable with all those changes? And
the only piece we didn't hit was Mary wanted to talk about reducing the monthly cap.
It's funny because I want to remove the cap entirely.
My concern is, so someone could come in and request their rent for a month or 2 months, then the 100, a big client, a big warehouse tenant could use up all of it pretty fast. You know, and then like you say, we're going to come back for more. But I just, to me, it's the optics of how this looks. Of if an executive hangar is renting for $2,800 a month, and we have a $2,500 limit, it at least says they're going to pay, or and like you say, we can't evict them; they can still be in it. But it's kind of the optics of it. And when I ran those numbers and I sent them to Kevin and Teresa, I don't see that someone should be requesting that much and triaging
I think
it.
that's too subjective.
Well, I think the whole thing
Personally,
is pretty subjective.
it's too subjective. Well, if we're following the federal government's plan, I mean, all you have to do is say, I have a hardship, I need 6 months, right? You can't discriminate that my mortgage is $14,000 and his is $800, right? That's not the way it works.
Okay.
I would agree with Teresa. I think it's too subjective, and I don't think it's fair to make the decision based on, well, if it's a low dollar amount, we'll let you defer your rent, but if it's a high dollar amount, then you can afford it, so therefore we're not going to help you.
Well, it goes back to triaging and who has access to a line of credit and who doesn't. That's how any of the other entities who are providing help at this time are viewing things.
Well, you're asking them again to prove that they have the financial means to do that. And I don't see how that's fair. And Brent, is that even legal? Brent.
I don't know if I'm saying, but it sounds like we're discriminating for sure.
Yes, that'd be the concern. Somebody gets denied and there'd be a complaint that it was done based on discriminatory basis.
Well, I guess Josh was the one who was saying that you should put in a cap. And so now there's talk like putting in a cap is discriminatory. And I'm just questioning what level of cap. But Josh was the one saying to put in a cap.
When Josh and I talked, the term first come, first serve was a legal term that he used describing people's access to the program, so that when it was done, they could would have a basis for describing that the funding was completed. So if we take that out, I don't see any problem taking that out, but that was his reasoning. When he talked about the cap, and Peter Kirsch has mentioned this as well, that creating that cap was a way, and that's arbitrary. The airport could create a cap based on its own financial condition or the perceived financial condition of the tenants we serve. So he completely supported the cap. He didn't say that was discriminatory in any way. I think if you didn't apply the cap properly, you could be perceived as discriminatory, but the cap itself is not discriminatory.
So if the cap itself is not discriminatory, you can set the cap at any level you wish, is what I'm hearing.
That's correct.
I would agree with that. We're talking about this from the standpoint of getting to this 175, and no one knows what the future holds, but because it's a deferral program, I'm not envisioning a large portion of our tenants taking advantage of this. It's going to be, the one that is large, that's more than, it's more than 10,000. They employ a lot of people in our community. And so what we're trying to do is help these people, bridge over some time. But, I'm not seeing anyone that's going to want to go into 2022 with rent permits. I just don't see that. And as I talk to folks, we're talking about a few months, 3-4 months, maybe 6 months, and then working with them on a payment program over an 18-month period to amortize that and pay it back. And again, I'm thinking it's a handful of tenants. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing.
Can you ask if Clear Capital got money from the CARES Act?
I imagine you could ask them. I don't know.
Well, the CARES Act money, if you pay rent and salaries, it's forgiven, so that anybody who got that is going to pay their rent on time, right? Because they have to prove that that's what they use the money for.
And the same question for Mountain Home Center or Mountain Lion. you know, it's.
Yeah, but we can't ask that question coming in. Do you guys have reserves? Do you have the money? Like, we can't, it's not reasonable.
Well, if they're getting
Well,
money from other entities and then from us too, is that
But they're not getting
appropriate?
anything from us other than a deferral. They have to pay it back. It's just so they
That's
can
true.
keep their cash flow going. I want to keep Mountain Home Center employing people. I want to
Mhm.
keep all of them.
And some of these people will argue that you, airport, got CARES Act money that was intended to help buoy up your aviation community to the sum of $157,000. And so we're trying to, make sure that all our businesses stay solvent.
Mm-hmm.
So my vote would be take out the cap and the first come, first served. It's not the hill I'm going to die on. So what's the majority say?
I would agree with that, and I would say, why don't we just leave the 175 number in there? We can always extend it, but why don't we limit our guaranteed risk?
So we have another conversation. Yeah, I like that.
And where is the clarity in number 1 about may apply to defer payments for a term not to exceed 18 months? So
3 months
it's
past
more
the lifting of the order.
may apply to
90
defer
days.
payments for a term not to exceed 90 days past the lifting of the emergency
Order.
declaration. And then a clarity of all deferred payments shall be repaid within 1 year, 18 months. I mean, because the way it's written now, it is not clear.
Well, it says that at 18 months we have to be made whole. And you're right, we could add some clarity in there, but it does say that they don't have more than 18 months to pay us back.
It says may apply to defer payments for a term not to exceed 18 months.
Exactly.
That's coming out, right? We're going to clarify that.
We're gonna
But the repayment, do you want 18 months, 12 months? I like 12, but I'll go with 18.
So
I think to clarify it, not to jump in, but to clarify it, say may apply to defer payments for 90 days after the end of the declaration of emergency to be amortized over a term not to exceed however many months you agree on.
Yeah, that's
to be paid
Just
back.
make it 2 sentences. Repayment shall occur under these terms.
Yeah.
2 sentences.
No, we can fix that.
Right.
And I can email you guys this verbiage on qualification. It's from
please
LA
do.
County.
We'd
It's what
like
they're
that.
using.
Yeah, I would like that included, or the appropriate version of it.
Well, I'll send it to Kevin and he can send it to you guys, BCC or
Yeah,
whatever.
Kevin having it is fine. Kevin having it is fine.
And
That's from
it
LA
will be
County.
available. It'll be available to the public if anybody wants to see it as well.
Mm-hmm.
What will
Right,
be
Kevin?
available?
Anything
What,
that's sent to the board
available?
tonight.
Yeah, anything sent to
The
the board,
verbiage I sent you, Mary.
specifically
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
what Teresa has that's going out to the board.
We'll post that in the board book file.
Okay.
Great.
Are we all in agreement?
I'm just, I'll vote for it, but I am very concerned that it's putting Kevin in an awkward position, and I'm concerned about the optics of this and that it could blow back on us later as the airport district.
Well, we're right there we're government, right?
I mean,
They're
I'm just
gonna
putting it
take
out.
a ton of heat for all this bailout money.
I think this is a good thing for the airport to get some credit for doing this, to help people. I have an opposite opinion.
Yeah, I have to say, we'll see what happens, right? And we'll get some feedback as the applications come in and application quote unquote comes in and staff processes it. But I have to say, I also perceive that doing everything we can do to help local businesses is definitely positive.
I agree, and that's why I'm willing to vote for this. But I'm glad we're addressing the period of time. I have real concerns about it, but I do want to help the community.
I have one more. quick. Does the chair, Kevin, do you want me to modify this? You can go on with the meeting and then I can give you the language, or does Brent want to take a stab at modifying the language so the board has a resolution that's acceptable?
I'd love to get it done tonight so you can start implementing it.
I think just if someone wanted to make a motion on the resolution with the following modifications, that's probably fine for tonight. And then Teresa's going to have to sign these anyway, so she can double check our work.
I just sent it to Hardy and Kevin, the LA County verbiage.
The only piece I think was the amortization schedule. I'm not sure if the board land on 12 months?
We've got that. I guess.
If we're going to go 90 days past the end of the emergency, which could be 6 months, then 12 months beyond that is 18 months. I mean, that sounds like what the intention was. And if the emergency is lifted May 1, it was making us whole, you said, by 18 months, including the period of time that we were deferring. Right? So if we're deferring for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Is it bottom line, it's deferment plus 12 months? Or deferment plus 18?
I thought
I'll go either way.
18 is what I heard.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of a discussion on deferment plus 12, and I agree with Teresa in preferring deferment plus 12.
Okay, that's fine with us too.
Well, I mean, that's two of us. You might want to check
Jim,
with the others.
Rick?
No, that's fine with me. Works.
It's fine with me.
Okay with Rick.
And I'm happy to make a motion to sort of approve it based on that conversation, but maybe it's easier, Hardy, for you to help us quantify or qualify exactly what we all agreed on.
Yeah.
And come back after we talk about the next agenda item. Is that fair for everyone?
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. I'll type it up and then I'll give it to you.
Do you want to ask for any public comment now?
Sure, yeah. Do we have any?
There is no public comment.
Okay. I guess then we'll just leave this one open and go to the hangar study, T-hangar study.
Let me just get my next agenda item up here. I just wanted to make sure that this study got back into your hands after the previous February meeting, where some modifications were requested, particularly related to the $1,400 per month hangar rents. And so really the best way to look at the changes that were requested is there on page 3, where you can see that market and debt recovery numbers have been added in there in an extra pro forma. It did get us up to 1.6% internal rate of return, which is still not very good. But I just wanted to put this out there and just find out if the board had any other further guidance on this. You can see in the staff report, I'm recommending that you table this until we really understand what kind of cash flow the airport is going to have and how it's going to be affected with COVID-19 before we move forward with a $2.6 million reserve allocation on hangars if you went with the 50% bonding. But interested in your thoughts, your comments on anything that's in the revised study.
I think I would support the idea of just deferring the deep conversation on the whole thing until we're not in a crisis situation.
I agree with Jim.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, agreed with
That's
Kevin
5
and agreed
agreed.
with Jim. Yeah.
All right. Well, you have it now. So.
And with that, Kevin, is there anything specifically that you want to ask us to give feedback on tonight? Or
well, that was really it. Is I think in maybe we're going to know in the next 3 to 4 months. I think where our finances are going to end up, and if we come out of this and healthy, I'll bring this back. Eventually, we'll bring it back. Probably during the budget discussion, it'll come up anyways in August, and that's probably some pretty good timing to talk about it again.
Okay, great. Are you done now, Hardy?
Yeah.
Who's ever flipping papers, please mute yourself. Who's ever flipping
Hardy.
papers?
Oh, sorry.
You got the binder out, Mary?
I think I'm ready.
Well, we can go GM report if you're not sure.
Yeah, let's do the GM report. I'll finish this.
You guys are moving too fast. Okay. Put that up. So in the general manager's report, just a couple of updates on some things. Obviously, lots of postponements on conferences and training. We're hoping in the fall that we'll be able to do a few different things. Twice in this GM report, we've got some runway utilization report updates. And so I put that in the ad hoc committee as well as a little paragraph. We were hoping to be able to have Tom Breen come in and present it, because it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of data in there, kind of how that's put together, but it does show some interesting results. But we're not going to wait anymore. We're going to go ahead and tee that up for May, whether we're doing it this way or we can meet in person in some format. But that is coming, and at the same time, we also have I will indicate that the alternate runway study that we had Mead and Hunt do is also complete, and I'll have that ready for you guys, ready for the board here in for this May board meeting, the next one. Any questions on item 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, and 4? I skipped 3. I'll come back to that.
Do we have to wait for May for those 2 items, or will you ship it out now?
I'll ship it out as soon as we have it 100% complete. There's still a few edits on the alternate runway study. We can, as soon as we feel that tool is ready to go, we'll and I think it is. Hardy and David are on here. The runway utilization report, is that, you think, ready for public distribution?
Basically, yeah. Tom Breen is just kind of finalizing how he's going to actually present it to us.
Okay. We have a meeting on it on Friday. I still have a few questions on it that I need to get answered to make sure I understand that it's doing what I think it does. But we will make sure we roll that out here as soon as it's 100% complete.
We had a ad hoc meeting with him, and it is showing, and the numbers show there is increased traffic off of 29, and he is making a bunch of heat maps. And I would think before it was still kind of it was moving towards between draft and final. Are David Diamond and I going to see this before it goes to the whole board, or no? With whatever you have, Kevin?
We can do that as many times as the ad hoc committee would like to. My question that I just... Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that one of the things I'm looking at is making sure, as I looked at it, some of the airport operation numbers, I just wanted to make sure that those all match up, because there was quite an increase from 2015-16 to 2019. That was one of my questions. And Mary, you're welcome to come to that meeting on Friday. We're just going to sit down and go through it. So I just had a few questions for him.
Yeah, he was running a lot of different models and said that he'd show them to us, and he did some of them while we were online, but I would like to see them again. Oh, Poochie!
Cute.
Yeah, we can get you and David together before we release it, just to make sure as you've been working on that project before it goes to the full board.
That would be good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let me go back to 3. I skipped over that. The workforce housing JPA, we had our first real Brown Act board meeting. It went really well. And there's already some movement on housing projects that Emily Vitus, who's our executive director, is working on. But I want you to know that organization is up and running, has an executive director and a bank account, and we should start to see some fruit coming out of the housing JPA. Item 5, the business attendants and chamber of commerce support, our business assistants, sorry. This kind of interesting one. I've Hardy and I spent multiple meetings with the Truckee Donor Chamber, and I've also had 2 different calls and an email today with the North Lake Tahoe Chamber, so both chambers, that we're trying to figure out what are some ways that we can, are there ways, things that the airport can do to help support our local business community, particularly supporting jobs. And so the Chamber of Commerce, the Truckee Donor Chamber, did come forward with a proposal to seek additional funding for the Truckee Tomorrow initiative. Wondered if the board had interest in that. And then I'm still working with Jeffrey Heinz with NLTRA to find out what kind of programs they're also operating that may be able to help support the business community on the lake side. Before I get too deep and involved and bring proposals to the board on that, I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts. A couple of you have talked to me about this, but I wanted just to get a little bit of conversation going about that component. And then the last thing I've got in this particular item is we do have quite a bit of project work going on this summer that we are really going to work hard to try and get out there early. Everything from playground expansion to signs, the warehouse projects. Highway 267 is ready to go with the sidewalk. Try to get those out and really try and utilize our local preference procurement policy that we have to get local businesses out doing some of these projects. And we also may want to think about the CARES Act funding along with the matching grant, where we have about $670,000 of revenue we didn't think we were going to have based on some of the things that came out of the CARES Act with grant matches and the CARES Act funding that came directly to us. And again, put that money out there in the community to get projects done that the airport needs to do anyways, whether it's deferred maintenance or other. So there it is. Just wanted to get your thoughts on any of those things.
I totally support doing whatever we can to help our community. Whatever we can.
Yeah, it seems, if I'm tracking correctly, that neither chamber as of yet, perfectly understandably, has of yet a kind of a robust strategy for helping local businesses. Like they don't quite yet have a completely robust response, if I'm tracking correctly. And I'd love us, when they each have a robust response, to be able to contribute to it, as opposed to we made an inquiry, how can we help you? And they're like, okay, here's this program we have, Truckee Tomorrow, that needs some help.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Truckee Donor Chamber came forward with us. They have what's called a resilience fund that they're working on, which, as we went through the legalities of it, is very difficult for us to contribute to because it makes loans to local businesses. But what we can do is maybe support some of the other, what kind of came out of that conversation is the Truckee Tomorrow effort of increase our funding for that then allows them to deploy resources in other places. They've got a proposal in there. We can refine that and come back. The North Lake Tahoe Chamber, that one isn't quite as ready for board conversation yet, because we're still trying to figure out how we might be able to be helpful there.
Well, I guess keep us posted.
Yeah, I
guess
what I'm hearing is I should bring things that we do want to
definitely
kind of move forward with. So, and I do have in here qualifying items, things that qualify for airport funding and are part of an organized response effort. Okay.
I guess what my comment is, Kevin, as much as you can't just blanketly contribute to things like the resilience fund, can you still put up the word out there that we may be able to and might be willing to help with specific needs and projects?
Yeah, and
I don't want to put out the term like we can't participate. Exactly. It's not aviation. We're not going to do it.
We're going to do it a different way.
The opposite.
Yeah. I think our thing is that we're going to try and our relief response will be a different way, in that we do have a lot of needs that need to be done here at the airport, and we're working on a kind of a list of those projects that are going to get out, that would go out to bid anyways this summer and fall. Perfect. Okay, thank you. I also included in this the wildlife hazard assessment. That's something we've been kind of working on for a little while, but I wanted you to have a copy of it. It's more of a tool. We gave 3 or 4 recommendations in there. One of them could be slightly controversial, even though it's highly recommended and FAA or AIP eligible. That's perimeter fencing, and I don't know that any of us are right now on the staff level are advocating for a full perimeter fence around the airport, which is one of the things the study talked about. But there might be a few strategic locations where we put perimeter fencing that may redirect migratory patterns of deer so that they stay away from critical areas. Another thing that came out of the study is trying to push back the vegetation on the north side of runway 29. And that was an easy thing, and it's actually going on right now to keep the deer farther away from the runway. And so a couple of really good things came out of that, but I wanted you to have a copy and get it out to the public. Any questions on that? So interesting study. Item 7 is kind of another critical item that I wanted just to spend a little time on. And this, I can go both ways. Since I've written this, I've kind of even rethought some of my thinking on it, but from last week. But we do have quite a few agency partnerships out there. We have one land acquisition from the Land Trust, and then we've got infrastructure participation on trails that we had talked about with the Soaring Ranch project that eventually we would bring back to the board for discussion. And again, not understanding the total economic impact of COVID-19 on our finances, our recommendation is that we might want to wait 60 to 90 days to better understand our cash flow before we launch into those. Now, the flip side of that, as I was thinking about this last couple of days, some of these projects, if they still have funding, may be exactly one of those things that could get some local folks working and provide some economic stimulus if we wanted to think about, park construction, things like that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts.
I think we should find out if they still even want to do it, because everybody may be on hold right now with these types of things.
Yes, and Mark Lamb is in the process of checking on that. He may have answers to that.
Yeah, I'm probably on the idea, echoing Teresa's point, and something like a 30 to 60 day deferral at least.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking out loud.
Yeah, that's our recommendation from staff. So I'm kind of seeing everyone is okay with waiting, and we've communicated with a lot of these folks, and they kind of get it. They kind of know that these things are coming, and we are also double checking on the rest of their funding. At least for 2 of them had other funding that they needed.
Yeah, I think they'll all understand that the whole world is on hold.
Yeah.
Right.
They understand. Yeah. Mark Lamb, are you still on the line? Is that what as you communicated with them?
Yes, I was actually waiting to get some direction on, since we have put them on hold twice now, I wanted, before I was reaching out to them again, I wanted to get a feel for what kind of time frame we're going to be looking at. So 60 to 90 days. It's obviously the CAT project and also the MAP project that have other supporters that now I can go back to them and confirm if they have those monies still coming in or not.
Great. We'll get going on that and let you know what we find. Item 8 is the upcoming board meeting schedule. I did have one thing. We do have this board workshop planned for 1:30 to 4 on the 27th. If that is a virtual meeting like this, is the board still interested in conducting that? And that's, again, 2.5 hours before our regular board meeting. Just thought it might be worth a little bit of conversation, because that's coming up in 5 weeks.
I'm good either way, but I bet our emergency declaration is lifted by then.
Yeah, we might be okay. We might just be sitting 6 feet apart, but we might be able to meet.
I hope you're right, Teresa.
We can bet offline.
I'd support just leaving it there, and we'll try to make it work one way or another.
Perfect. All right. And then we have confirmed the budget workshop for August 26th, again, 1:30 to 4, like we've done last couple of years. And that's it for the we have our goals. You can see there, the last goal on there, I did make a note that part of our that we need to have conversations with the board workshop before action is taken on the final goal related to budgeting and how the budget is built. So that's all I have for the GM report.
Okay, then we're back to item number 8. Hardy, ready?
Can you first check on
Oh yeah, public comment.
public comment? Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
No public comment.
Okay. Back to number 8.
Okay. So someone can move to approve resolution 2020-03 with the following modifications. That proof of financial impact, including an attestation of such, shall be provided in the rent deferral form. Rent deferral for a period of no more than 90 days past the date of the lifting of the governor's order of pandemic. We're going to remove first come, first serve in the verbiage outlined in the bottom of the resolution. And we're going to add a section, amortization of repayment shall be a maximum term of 12 months past the final date of rent requested deferment.
So moved.
Second.
And you waive the reading?
Those changes.
Yeah, and I
will
waived
get,
reading.
those changes will get incorporated in the request for the rent deferral as well.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Well, then we need a roll call.
All right. Vice President Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Director Wallace?
Yes.
Director Morrison?
Yes.
And President Odette?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need public comment here, Brent?
No, because you had asked for it before we sent it to Hardy.
Great. So any board member announcements? No? We've got the schedule for the upcoming meetings, which is fine. So it's time to adjourn.
Can I just quickly thank the board? On behalf of staff, we appreciate all of you checking in on us and making sure we're doing okay. And it's much appreciated. And I think overall as a group, we're feeling pretty good. But thank you all for your notes and your emails asking how we're doing. Hope you're all doing well too.
Thanks for your leadership, Kevin, during all of this in the community.
Well,
appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Anyone want to make a motion? Mary, you're muted.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Can we just say all in favor, or do we need to roll call it?
I think we have to roll call.
Okay.
Yeah, might as well do a roll call.
Vice President Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Director Wallace?
Yes.
Director Morrison?
Yes.
And President Odette?
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well done.
Bye.